Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon to all our viewers from all over the world. Thank you for joining us for Lecture 8 of the YSBC Web Lecture Series. The topic for today's conversation is Social Business, Make Happiness Work with our speaker, Dr. Kerstin Humberg, founder, Yunel, and our moderator, Professor Mario Biggeri, Associate Professor of Development Economics, University of Florence, Italy. Yunel is a Berlin based company with the mission to unleash human potential and happiness for positive social change. In short, to make happiness work. It offers a novel approach to biography and life strategy for executives, leaders, and entrepreneurs. The name Yunel pays tribute to Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus and Nelson Mandela, the YU of Yunus and the NEL of Nelson, making up the name Yunel. Happiness and super happiness are terms very close to our heart. As Professor Yunus says, making money is happiness, but making other people happy is super happiness. So, with that spirit, let us begin today's discussion. And I welcome Professor Muhammad Yunus for his welcome note. Professor Yunus.
Thank you. Thank you very much and welcome, Kerstin and Mario. It's wonderful to have you together. Both Kerstin and Mario, very good friends for a long time. Mario's relationship began a long time back. I can't even remember when it was. But he at that time, he was living in the commune. So all his friends, they grew their food, they lived there with their children and everybody. So he invited me to go to his commune, spend time with his commune members. It was an amazing experience for me to see how life can be as simple as that. And now Mario is teaching at the University of Florence, and he is one of the earliest founder of Yunus Social Business Center. And Kerstin, of course, is a remarkable human being. And she was a student when I met her. She got very interested in social business. She wanted to know about social business. She visited Bangladesh and so on. And I didn't know that she has a plan behind all this, because she not only interested, she wanted to do a PhD. Everybody wants to do a PhD, but her was very special. I was surprised. She wanted to do a PhD on social business. So I don't know how to do a PhD in social business in neuroscience. It's not economics. So that's what I said. I don't know anything what you want to do. But she brought neuroscience and positive psychology and all that, and based this whole idea about how happiness and social business are all linked. So today she will explain how she makes all this link. But definitely she has made a tremendous contribution in making the roadmap to happiness. If you're confused where you're going, ask her. She has the roadmap to happiness. You saw in the slides which shows how to go through all the things and so on, and finally get to your destination. She feels that the basic thing is she feels it's all about mind. How mind works, that's what the world will be. So this is a very fundamental issue she raises. And I'll not take any more time. I'll invite Mario to take the floor and get the fireside chat started with Kerstin. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Professor Yunus. I am so happy to be here with you and to be part of this lecture as moderator. It's a fantastic day to me because we are going to make things very important. I remember, we know since long, I agree, but I always remember one aspect, and today we are going to speak about it. The seventh point of social business is to make it with joy, and joy is part of our life. Our life without joy cannot make any difference. Okay, so joy is very important, and today we have Yunel, we have Kerstin Humberg to speak about make happiness work, which is fantastic. So I will introduce briefly her, and then we will have a dialogue which would be open and would be, I think, fascinating for all of you. For those people that want to have the opportunity to really think about their life, about what their life means, and how it's not just a vision, it's the fact that while you're working about what you want from your life, you have to be happy. Otherwise, things will not work. As Professor Yunus always say, we need social business, and we need to make social business in a way that make and creates super happiness. So a few words about Kerstin. She has been a former journalist. Then she has worked for several years for McKinsey. Then she decided to move exactly in the PhD that Professor Yunus mentioned, and thinking about social business. But then she decided, and probably she had already in her mind and in her to think about it. And she created her own social business, which is fantastic, because you would be interested in how to produce happiness. I think this is a very important issue that we should keep in mind. Our happiness depends on the happiness of the other. And when you work, you want people around you to be happy. You want to be happy. Otherwise, why you wake up and why you go to work? You need that. You need that tremendously, especially nowadays. So we have several elements to discuss, and I will leave. I will leave the floor to Kerstin, because I think is the right way to go. So, what is happiness for you? This is the first question, and if you can say something about that, and yeah, please. So,
What is happiness for me right now? To be with you, to see Professor Yunus and all my friends from Bangladesh. That's wonderful, and to have the chance to talk about your passions is also very joyful. But if you ask me from a psychological perspective what happiness is so-called subjective well-being. So it's a very personal, very individual experience that ultimately depends on two things: how you feel, your emotions, how loved you feel, how grateful you feel, or how much you enjoy your work, and life satisfaction. So it's one element is more the affective, and the other element of happiness is cognitive, how you evaluate your life.
very, very, very important. I myself am very interested in these issues, as Professor Yunus knows, and but what does it take to become happy, or how to become happy? Yeah, this is the
big
all of us is asking. We are all asking ourselves these things.
Yeah, exactly. This question, how to become happy, what to do to be happy, it's a question that has been asked already by ancient philosophers, and there are a lot of perspectives on it. And I guess we will discuss what role money plays in this equation. But ultimately, when we talk about happiness, happiness lies within us. So happiness really depends on how we view the world, what we expect from the world, from our life, and how we interpret what happens to us. So therefore, one way to become happier is definitely to be mindful and use mindfulness, meditation, in order to be more at peace with you. And there are other little life hacks that you can use, for example, investing in your social relationships, because all studies about happiness and well-being show that ultimately it's the quality of our relationships that affects our happiness. So the more time we invest in the people that are close to us and share our love with them, the more happy you will feel. And nature is also a great place to start in order to increase your happiness.
Very good. And I really think that the multidimensionality of our happiness is very important. So can you go a bit further on the idea that does money make happy?
Does money make happy? That's a big question in positive psychology, which is the science of happiness and well-being. And there is no easy answer to it. Definitely, money can make your life easier. If you have money and you are sick It's easier to go to the doctor. And if you don't have money and you are constantly worried how you should pay your food, how you can pay your rent, how you can make your living, then this is so stressful that it has a negative impact on the emotional dimension of happiness. So when you ask, can money buy happiness? So the research perspective is twofold. As I said initially, happiness has two dimensions. It's life satisfaction and the emotional well-being. And we can see that money correlates with your life satisfaction. So when your income goes up, people from a cognitive point of view have higher satisfaction. But that doesn't say anything about their emotions. So you can be the richest man in the world and still unhappy because you feel greedy, you feel stressed because you don't know how and where to spend the money, you don't have people that you can share love with. So you always, when thinking about money, you always have to keep those two dimensions in mind. And therefore, the ultimate response is money makes life easier, but can't buy you happiness. You have to invest in yourself.
And this is what I think is the debate we have today in your lecture. As an entrepreneur, then first as a scholar, later as an entrepreneur, you really started to make happiness work. So how this idea came to you, and how did you first get involved in social business?
So it's a long story. Basically, it's I guess how the little pieces of my life puzzle fall in place. But maybe let's start with the question how I got first involved in social business. The excitement about social entrepreneurship as a broader idea already got implanted when I was about 20 years old, working as a young journalist for the German press agency in South Africa. And at that time, I was dating a British guy who happened to work for Ashoka, the global organization promoting the idea of finding entrepreneurial solutions to social problems. And so more than 20 years ago, I did my first reports on social entrepreneurship. So the idea was already planted when in 2007, and Professor Yunus will probably smile when he hears that story, I got a call from Karl Usner, who is a very old friend of Professor Yunus. When they both were in their 30s, they were working together because this Karl Usner was working for the German Development Ministry. And this Karl Usner gave me a call and said, Kerstin, one of my closest friends from Bangladesh won the Nobel Peace Prize. I want to invite him and I need you to help me organizing that event. I'm already 80 years old and I feel too tired to take everything on myself. So please help me. And I thought, who is this guy, this Muhammad Yunus? So I started to read about it and actually reminded that at university also we talked about Grameen Bank and microcredits. So I thought, this is really interesting. And when I first, that was 2007, when I first read about Grameen Danone, the new multinational joint venture that Professor Yunus was creating, my curiosity as a journalist sparked, and I thought, I want to go there. I want to know what's going on, how it works, whether it works, why they do it. And since at that time, I got a chance from my employer, McKinsey, to go to do a PhD, a 3-year leave to do my PhD thesis. I thought, that's perfect. I only went to McKinsey to learn about business. And now this would be a wonderful chance to understand how we can combine the business world and business know-how with social impact. And that's how Professor Yunus and I started to work together and ultimately did this research piece on poverty reduction through social business in Bangladesh.
Very interesting. I didn't know about this. And I really think that many of us that are working with Professor Yunus, helping him and working with, came really because he brought in the world very new ideas and new opportunities to rethink and to introduce with creativity new idea. And so my question now is why did you decide to create your own social business, Yunel, which I think is something very special. I don't know many other type of business like that, and I really appreciate. So I enjoyed also looking a few things
at the maps, at the live maps. So as Sinat said in the introduction, Yunel as a company pays tribute to Muhammad Yunus and Nelson Mandela. They're both my big role models in life, alongside my dad, who also became an entrepreneur. And because to me, Yunus and Nelson have shown that human beings have unlimited potential. Look at Nelson Mandela. So you all know about Yunus. But Nelson Mandela, he spent 27 years in prison and managed to forgive the people that caused or took away 27 years of his life. To me, that's amazing. That was an act how he contributed to peace. And also Professor Yunus, who impacted the life of millions of people in the world. To me, it shows that every human being has the potential to not only change him or herself and increase their own happiness, but also affect the life of millions of people, because we have this unlimited mind. And inspired by this idea, I was asking myself, what is my potential? What are my strengths? What are my passions? How can I use my own assets to make a positive contribution to other people? And slowly the excitement about social business came together with my excitement and passion for psychology and understanding why human beings are the way they are and how human beings can become the best version of themselves. And when I heard a speech of one of the most known positive psychologists from the US, Tal Ben-Shahar, back in 2013, it suddenly made click. I knew that I wanted to be engaged in social business. I just had not yet an idea what to do. And when I heard Tal Ben-Shahar talking about happiness, I thought, oh my goodness, my parents did everything right. In the education I got, I was so privileged to grow up in a way that allows me to be happy, that I want to use this asset and my passion for psychology to work with entrepreneurs, work with leaders, to help them use the positive potential, the impact potential they have in their companies and in their communities.
So now people, I think, that are listening are curious to know more about what is Yunel about. Is your enterprise. I think what is the purpose, the mission? If you can give us an understanding, really.
Yeah. So Yunel's mission is to unleash human potential for positive social change. In short, to make happiness work. And to make happiness work means that I believe work is an important part of happiness, because we spend so much time with and at work. So if we understand how we can, through our work or through our social business, also positively affect our happiness, perfect. And the way we do it, so we basically do two things. One is use imagination and visualization for people to create the roadmap for their own life. That's how we bring together the strategic thinking I learned at McKinsey with positive psychology, the science of happiness and well-being, to work with entrepreneurs and leaders about their own life story. So we explore who they are, what makes them happy, what their strengths are, what their values are, in order to create a positive vision for their future. And to anchor this positive vision, the positive portfolio of themselves, we use creative arts. We create what we call life maps. So huge maps that are almost like treasure maps of your life, where you can, when you look at them, always remind yourself of where you've come from and where you want to go. And the trick about it, and that is sort of referring to neuroscience, as Professor Yunus said, we know from neuroscience that the brain hardly makes a difference between image and reality. So if you have a very vivid, a very inspirational picture of your positive future, of yourself in your mind or at your wall, and you look at it, it constantly allows you to recognize patterns. To give you an example, if you, Mario, have your life map and your vision is one day to live in an Italian farmhouse and work with students on social business, and you see that old farmhouse daily on your map, you will hear all the information and you will see all the information much better that you need in order to get there. It basically focuses your mind on where you want to go. And then the second pillar of Yunel, alongside these life maps, are training programs and workshops with leaders of large corporations. I work across all industries a lot with automotive and pharmaceutical companies, where you can see that leaders today and companies are really in search of purpose and meaning in order to be happy and be more effective in what they do.
I'm taking notes because I'm taking notes because what you are saying is quite challenging me as well. So thank you.
Maybe we should do your life map.
Maybe next. So you came up with this mission, and you already say to us that it's very relevant for all people, no, and but also for entrepreneurs. And I was thinking about that during the last weeks when I agree on being the moderator of this lecture. And the reason is that the entrepreneurs, if they're able to make good leadership, they can make the difference for the people that are working for them. So the entrepreneurs, to me, looks like key stakeholder in this. And so, yeah, I would like you to go more about this mission and to try to move a bit about what are the results, how you feel things are going with your social business, and yeah, please.
So I guess, as for most entrepreneurs, getting started is much more difficult than now. I've been working on Yunel for 6 years, and now after 6 years, you can really see how the business is flourishing, and that now after 6 years, it's almost exactly the time when the German Association for Positive Psychology was set up. So the concept was very new in Germany, and people were looking at me like, what? Happiness, business, what are you talking about? But by now, there's such a high demand, and there are so many more people working on these topics, like what makes an organization meaningful? What does it take for human beings in corporations to be not only happy, but to be what's called psychologically well? So in the long run, they are healthy, they are motivated, they are engaged, which is ultimately also much better for the business. So Yunel is going very well, which is fantastic. And with regard to your question about leadership, or what we would call positive leadership, there is no doubt that happiness, or your state of well-being as a leader, has a huge impact on your surrounding. And I guess Professor Yunus is a perfect example. So he's such a happy person, at least he comes across to me like really shining from within. So when I meet him, I always feel this inspiration and excitement. And it's no surprise that with his attitude, his very positive, joyful attitude and conviction and purpose that he has, he's inspiring as a leader so many people around the world to follow in his footsteps. And the same holds true for leaders in, like, let's say VW, a German company that's going through huge transformation. And I work a lot with leaders from VW, and I always tell them, like, on a larger scale, your company might be in trouble, and of course the company has to work on it. But even within your inner circle, with your team, you and the way you look at the world, the way you behave, your mindset, have a huge impact on how the team does. And then through the team, there's almost a ripple effect. Through the team, you can have a positive influence even on the department and on the larger level.
Very interesting. And yeah, you are using several approaches, no, in your social business, and you mentioned the map, and yeah, can you say a little more about these?
Yeah, of course I can explain. And I think those people who saw the videos saw the first live map that we did for Professor Yunus 5 years ago. So when I get a client who asks for a live map, we basically meet the client 5 times for around about 3 hours. And each session has one topic that is related to your personal happiness and well-being. So we, first of all, the work is a mix of training for the individual, as well at the same time information gathering for us to later co-create the map. So topics we look into are positive emotions, or emotions in general. What are emotions? Energy in motion. Where do they come from? And how can you cultivate positive emotions in order to broaden your horizon? We know that people who are in a positive state, if our brain is in a positive state, we are much more powerful, more solution-oriented, more creative, more altruistic. So we look into that topic and explore what inspires the person. What is the person grateful for? Who are the people or the things that the person loves? So we do a lot of interviewing, work with pictures, and then we move on and talk about strengths. What are strengths? How can you identify your strengths? How do they relate to your values? And how can you use your strengths for the purpose that you have at your work or in your life? And then other topics are, for example, relationships, then what is purpose, how to create meaning in your life. And then at the very end, we look at, based on all the work that we do, we synthesize the life goals and try to create a narrative and try to co-create the pictures that then finally are positioned on the treasure map of your life, in order to constantly remind you who you could be as the best possible version of yourself.
Very, very interesting. And I saw those maps at the beginning with the video, and I was very much attracted. And we will go, I think, back again about talking about other things. But one thing that comes to me quite obvious is yeah, what is the link between social business, more going on social business and the happiness?
Mhm.
So
So
we discussed already why happiness is important. If you want to add something more, because obviously that, as you said to me, is that you say that you spend a lot of time during your life working. So then when you go home, it can make the difference. I'm thinking, just thinking, no? Also with your family and with friends, if you are happy when you work. So please, go ahead.
so let me start by quoting Professor Yunus: making money is a happiness, and that's a great incentive. It is, it can bring you life satisfaction, but ultimately to make other people happy is a super happiness. And I can confirm from my own experience, I think I've always been a happy person due to the way I was raised through my parents, which I'm very grateful for. But now looking back, the last 6 years, I have been flourishing, despite the fact that I probably worked more than with McKinsey. Can you imagine? So I can confirm from a personal experience. But why is it? I think that the seventh principle of social business, do it with joy, plays a key role. And this joy is a positive emotion that fosters your emotional well-being. As I explained initially, happiness ultimately depends on life satisfaction and your emotional well-being. And while money may cater to your life satisfaction, your happiness, the joy that you feel, that comes from the emotional well-being. And when you ask how to positively affect your emotion and emotional well-being, it's key to have people around you to which you have good relationships. And I feel that the social business community is a wonderful community with a lot of very strong human ties. And we are social animals. So having these ties, your tribe, is key to our happiness. And then secondly, purpose and meaning are a cornerstone of happiness. Happiness is much more than pleasure. And the ancient Greeks already knew what Professor Yunus is teaching now. It's money can maybe give you some material pleasure, things that you can afford. But when we as human beings, and we have that dimension that is altruistic, that wants to support other people, we want to use our strengths and talents to be helpful to other people. Social business allows us to play out this dimension of human being. And when at the same time you can earn money through the business activities, through the business model, you get both. You get satisfaction through your income, while at the same time, the positive emotions and strong relationships and a sense of purpose and meaning, because you use your talents and strengths for something that is bigger than yourself. Oh, you are on mute, Mario?
Right? No, comes to my mind that would be interesting, especially for those listening, for also about some difficulties that you may have encountered, or everything was fine when you were set up in your social business unit. So obviously there was a lot of enthusiasm, but I know it's hard, and you say that you are working more than for McKinsey, but you are more happy, I'm sure.
Yeah, and certainly happiness is not the absence of happiness. And I think it's like two sides of the coin. It's impossible to be always happy. And we all face struggles in our life. We all face very difficult periods, I guess one person can better deal with it or is more resilient than others. And I guess that's a whole different story, how to increase your resilience. But and I'm happy to share the challenges that I faced as an entrepreneur, but maybe going even one step back further. When you ask, so why did I start to be excited about social business in the first place? It actually roots in a very painful experience. When I was a young journalist at that time in South Africa, when I first did my report on social entrepreneurship, I had a pretty traumatic experience. I was coming from this peaceful German village and grew up in the belief that all human beings are good. And I maybe a little bit naive at that time, wasn't aware about the fact that I was going into the most criminal city of the world at that time. And as you would expect, I also got in trouble and got hijacked by 5 men on a public train. And looking back, it was less the fact that I got hijacked and lost everything that I had at that time, and even had to take off my clothes on a public train, which was hugely embarrassing. But what was shocking to me was the fact that it happened during daytime on a public train that was filled with people. And I couldn't understand how human beings could just look away while other people, in that case me, are life threatened. And it really took me a couple of weeks to cope with that situation. And thank God, at that time, my parents never asked me to come back. They were basically saying, Kerstin, you went to South Africa for a purpose. So remind yourself of the purpose and try to make the best out of the situation. So ultimately, I asked myself, how come that human beings, of which I still believe are good at the core, how come that kids turn into gangsters? Why is there so much social injustice in the world? And what can I do about it? And these three questions never left me alone. These three questions, ever since last 23 years, have dictated what I'm doing and what I'm focused. So that's why I studied human geography, politics, and psychology, to understand the big picture of the world a little bit better. That's why I went to McKinsey, to understand what the private sector is about and how business can make a difference. That's why I did my PhD on social business, and that's why I created Yunel, in order to make the best use of my talents and my passion and my networks to make a positive contribution. In short, when you ask me about difficulties or challenges, I think ultimately it's always about turning pain into love and making something good about it. And yeah, when you refer to the challenges, and I assume I understood you that way, Mario, you wanted to know what challenges I experienced when I started Yunel as an entrepreneur.
I was just really thinking about how things come out and how you can make the difference by having a vision about yourself. And you explained very well. And I think that each of us has this type of situation that you bring with yourself. Yes, the question was, let's say, twofold. One was really about what you answered. The other was more technical, more, because I know that you decided to become an entrepreneur. And although, as Professor Yunus said, that everybody is somehow an entrepreneur, and also very poor people have to arrange their daily life. So I was wondering how it was working at the beginning. Now is you have an experience, you can talk by in being one good entrepreneur. Yeah, I would say a successful entrepreneur.
Mm. Yeah, so I mean, initially I knew that I wanted to set up my own social business, and I knew that it should somehow relate to happiness and positive psychology. But at that time, I didn't know that much about the topic. So I started to first to dig really deep into that field of happiness research, and started a 3-year trainer education to really know and understand what happiness and psychological well-being are about, in order to then use my journalism skills and consulting skills to translate it in a way that it can be used in business and in the broader public. So education. And then with regard to the business model, I felt the good thing about social business is that it's mission driven. So you first define the mission, which I did. How I make money ultimately doesn't really matter as long as it serves the social mission and purpose of my company. So I thought I cannot fail, because if the type of work that I'm doing is not paying off, then I just need to find another business model. But Yunel as such can not fail, because the mission is clear, and I will try to explore many creative ways in order to also make a living. And what was very helpful at that time was technique I call my ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese word for the reason why you get out of the bed in the morning, or your purpose and meaning in life. And it basically asks you to respond to 4 questions. One is, what do you love? What are your passions? Then the second is, what are you good at? What are your strengths? What capabilities do you bring? The third is, what does the world need? Is it peace? Is it happiness? Is it a new kind of capitalism? Is it better food? Whatever. And then the 4th question is, how can you make money? And if you then create almost a Venn diagram, you can find a lot of Ikigai pictures on the web. If you create a Venn diagram of it, the Ikigai is at the very center, is where everything comes together. It's your personal USP, unique selling proposition. It's what you value, it's what you are good at, it's what you love, and at the same time you make money. And to have that picture, and of course it took several months, if not years, to sharpen my own perspective on what my ikigai is. And of course also Yunel's business model changed over time. But I guess if you know that you cannot fail in reaching your mission, you just need to be creative until you also have a viable business model. It takes already a lot of pressure from your shoulder.
Yeah, sure. I think very, very interesting your experience, your personal experience, and your capacity to enter into the social business. So I have other questions, because while you were talking, I was thinking about the period that we are going through. Before going to the end of our talk, unfortunately, I would like to have some some idea, because this from you, because this pandemic is really challenging us. We are people that do things with joy, but we cannot meet, or there are difficulties and problems. Entrepreneurs are facing problems in Europe for sure, but also in other countries. I want to know, what is your reaction? What is the reaction of Yunel? What do entrepreneurs do? I don't know. I really ask you because I don't know what to answer to this question.
No, I guess it's a great question, because the pandemic is challenging all of us, no doubt. First of all, because of physical distancing, and I think many people take it too far. They understand physical distancing as social distancing, but I feel that right now we need social solidarity, not social distancing. So I think it's important difference. We should not huddle too closely, but it doesn't mean that we cannot be close to the people that we love. And that, I feel, is somehow often falling through the cracks, that people become lonely, and that shouldn't be, because it's making the situation worse. I think another huge challenge alongside all these business challenges and lost income and lost existences is the fact that we, or many of us, react with fear, which is a very natural reaction also. Whenever we as human beings are confronted with a situation that is new, that is unexpected, we don't know how we can cope with it, and we don't know exactly whether or not our own capabilities are good enough to cope with the situation, we face fear. And this fear is negatively affecting our brain capacity. We get so very narrow in our perspectives. And if then the sadness and frustration gets added, the frustration about the fact that we cannot live and work the way we are used to. We love routines, and we typically, human beings, avoid changes because changes require energy, but COVID costs a lot of energy because it requires so much change of us. So costs energy, it brings stress due to fear, and that's very tiring for all individuals, and that applies to business leaders and employees as well. Then in addition, for especially, I guess, for small scale entrepreneurs that are in the creative space, and I have many friends that are artists or work in the cultural sphere, they cannot act, they cannot perform these days. Restaurants are closed. So many people are really scared that their businesses are collapsing. And me too, in March, when the Corona pandemic took off in Germany, for 2 or 3 weeks, I was really fearful. I got cancellations every single day, large programs, even for autumn, although at that time we didn't know how the pandemic would evolve. And I thought, oh my goodness, if now everything is canceled and we are not earning anything, and then we may even go into a global recession, I mean, how will I make my own living? And that's the catastrophic brain that the human beings that we have, is that once we are fearful, once we are scared, we quickly get into a downward spiral and get really in our brain, the demons of the difficult future take place. And thank God at that time, a colleague of mine, through her enthusiasm, convinced me to change the business model and go away from trainings and workshops that we do in person to go fully online. And it was very difficult for me, because my mindset at that time was, these topics only work in person, I'm not good at technology, and this will go away very quickly, I don't want to do it. But thank God we did, and I realized I actually enjoy it. So we wouldn't do this session between Bangladesh, Italy, and Germany if it was not for Zoom. So I realized that I actually like it, and that you have wonderful opportunities also working online with companies. And as a matter of fact, the business really exploded, and we have the best year ever, because there's such a big demand for topics related to resilience, positive leadership, and well-being.
No, I can imagine now. While you were talking, I was thinking exactly that we need more than even before this. And probably before we didn't understand the relevance of relationship in the place where we work, the relevance of have a positive leadership, and the fact that people people will start to think, because of this pandemic, about more relevant things. And I remember one article in a newspaper written by Professor Yunus at the beginning of the pandemic, where while he was saying this is an opportunity rather than a problem. And I do believe a lot. We are still struggling. We have a lot of problems, big problems, also very, I would say very sad, but at the same time, we have opportunities. We have to be positive. I agree fully with you, and there is no point in I think the positive part is very important. So we are now closing to the end, and I would like to have from you some elements that, yes, how we can use to increase our happiness. What do you do to be happy? So if you can give us some final, I don't know, let's say some
Okay.
final things to say to us.
What do I do? And I mean, I guess everyone needs to find what works for him or herself. But what I do for my happiness is to take sufficient time for sleep. There is nothing affecting more our emotion than good sleep. And then do 15 minutes of headspace, which is the gym for your brain, mindfulness in the morning. I always, even if clients are around, take a 30-minute nap after a good lunch. And before I go to sleep, I pray and do 3 good things. And that's something that I highly recommend to try if you want to increase your happiness. So it's called 3 good things, or count your blessings. And what you do is the following. Every night, you take 2 minutes to ask yourself, what did you enjoy? What did you enjoy during that day? And these can be very small things. The sun that you saw in the morning when you woke up, the little chat with your children or your partner, good conversation at work, or maybe just a smile that you got on the subway. So what were the things that you enjoy, and what was your contribution to make it? Maybe you got the smile because you smiled, or maybe you had a good chat with your colleague in the office because you left the door open or brought a little piece of cake or whatsoever. So what was your contribution? And the effect is spectacular. It basically overcomes your catastrophic brain that even after a good day tends to focus on the stressful negative things. So it focuses you on the better reality that you have, and therefore positively affects your sleep. At the same time, you sharpen your awareness of the good things that happen every day in your life, which you often do not see because more difficult emotions are overlapping, which is just a protection mechanism from our brain.
Good, fantastic, I would say. There are some comments, they are very long, from Peter Bromley. Is thanking for the contribution, and he gives some comments which are very, very, very interesting, but are very long. So thank you. If there are, now I don't know, I think we are at the end. So thank you so much to all of you for being here. And thank you to you, Kerstin. You were fantastic, very, very, very interesting. I had to look at the watch to say, oh my God, what, because things were going, time was running. Time was running. Thank you. So I don't know at this moment, please. Is someone or questions? Zina, hi.
Yes, thank you very much for this great conversation, Dr. Kerstin, Professor Mario. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing your personal and professional story. And I think the last part, when you mentioned about resilience, that's very important now, because I think a lot of people are feeling a little hopeless, a little down with the whole world situation, unable to meet families. A lot of people have lost their jobs. But I think this being resilient, looking towards the future, how we can overcome. This is not the end, and we also have to be prepared for more for the future. Not only a pandemic, climate change, and a lot of issues are there. They are not going to just disappear unless we act on it. So I think we should focus on these, because these issues will be shaping our happiness for future. So let's work together to make world full of happiness, and of course super happiness also. So thank you very much to both of you and to our audience members for being a part of this session. We have many more sessions like this coming up, where our social business experts will be talking about their experiences, and I also welcome all of you to join again. So thank you very much. We now have a slideshow about our next lectures, and with that we will conclude our session today. So I request the tech team to please play the slideshow for the next lectures. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.